Hi everyone. So for the focus of my research, I wanted to study successful intervention strategies, literacy intervention strategies that can be used in high school and middle school classrooms. After teaching this year in an urban area like the Bronx or Brooklyn, I'm sure that a lot of you guys have seen that many of your kids are lacking the ability to read and write on grade level, and that many students are actually reading and writing far below grade level. So because this is a trend that I noticed in my own classroom and in other classrooms that I've spoken to with my coworkers and you guys, I realized that we need to learn more about what strategies we can implement into our classrooms to help our students grow. When I set out to do this research, I thought that I was going to find a lot of studies regarding literacy and how teachers can help their students grow. And while there is a lot of research that exists on this topic, it's mostly for interventions that are used in the elementary school classroom. And I found that much of the literature states that as a student gets older, it's a lot more difficult to implement strategies due to time constraints. And it's just not written into teachers' curriculum, and so it kind of falls to the wayside. And most students that are reading below grade level will continue to read below grade level all throughout high school, and that can really affect the kind of job that they have in the future. So the first part of my question is, what is literacy exactly? And in one of the articles, literacy was described as a tool to understand and interact with the wider world, as well as a set of dispositions and behavior that incorporates learners' motivation and engagement in using their skills to participate across school, community, and wider social contexts. But if we want to really simply define literacy, it's a person's ability to read and write. But now that we exist in a world with so much technology, that's kind of broadened past reading and writing in print to existing in a world where there's so much digital media that we have to interact with. So the first article that I read actually had to do with a study of out-of-school literacy activities that students participate in and how these activities can help them grow as readers and writers. So there was a study in New Zealand that focused on what literacy activities students participate specifically at home. And the survey conducted in one school revealed that many students have access to internet at home as well as books. Students reported in their survey preferring reading physical books to compare to reading digital media, and students also preferred watching YouTube videos over watching TV. And this article kind of revealed that teachers can use these various forms of media to engage and motivate their students to help improve literacy skills. The only downside that I really saw with this study was that it didn't really reveal a lot about the student's socioeconomic status, and in our case, many of my students don't have access to books at home, and some of them don't have access to the internet at home, so they're not engaging in these literacy activities, and that can have an impact on their reading level. So another big question is where literacy is acquired. So literacy is acquired both in and out of school, and it's also acquired in all of the content areas. Unfortunately, middle school and high school teachers are poorly trained in literacy intervention strategies. ELA teachers are kind of the primary source of students to develop these strategies, but it should really be something that they're learning and integrated into the curriculum of all content areas. Literacy abilities affect students' performance in all of the disciplines, and the new Common Core standards have a push for strong literacy skills. So that means in math classes, we're seeing a lot more word problems, and students need to have the ability to determine what information is relevant and not relevant to their word problem. And then in both science and social studies, the students are more likely to interact with unfamiliar vocabulary words, and that's where a lot of those readers struggle in those content areas. So a common theme that I saw in all of the articles was that vocabulary is a really big part of literacy and developing literacy levels. So effective literacy intervention strategies focus on how to determine the meaning of unfamiliar words. Many students struggle in determining the meaning of unfamiliar words, so I saw that a lot in my classroom where students kind of don't know the skills to use and don't really even try and figure out the meaning of a word. They're very quick to ask the meaning of a word. In science and social studies classes, they rely on these very specific vocabulary words that students need to be able to interpret. So one intervention strategy that I read about was the use of morphology, or the breaking down of a word structure. So in a few of the articles, it talked about how you can break down a word structure in order to determine its meaning, and that's particularly helpful in science and social studies classes. Another common theme was that we not only have to teach students what these strategies are, but how to apply these skills. So students are taught many different reading strategies, but struggle to transfer those skills to other disciplines. And students don't know how to apply the use of these strategies properly. In one article I read, the researchers participated in a thinking aloud protocol, and the study found that students with higher literacy levels use more strategies when they're reading, and they effectively apply those strategies. So in our classrooms, we have to be modeling how to use these skills and not just teaching the students what these skills are. Unfortunately, there's kind of limited research on this topic. So the research that I read typically had really small sample sizes. It was conducted over the course of a few weeks, and while all the studies I read reported gains in these students' reading levels, particularly in their reading comprehension, it's kind of hard to find any of this to be proved valid or reliable or credible, just because of the nature of the studies. So the studies all had some kind of pre-assessment and post-assessment. They would teach the literacy intervention strategies and then measured the students' growth. But it's hard to say if those students continue to grow, if the intervention strategy is what caused the growth, or if they would have seen that growth without the intervention strategy. So I guess the key takeaway from my research is that all content areas, I'm looking at you, social studies people, really need to be focused on teaching students these different strategies and how to apply them so that we can have better readers and writers in our classroom.